Well, the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games are in the history books, and the athletes are on their way home after so many memorable stories and wonderful performances. And we thought we would gather our hosting crew at CBC Sports to reflect on the Games. And here they are. There's Stef Reid, Hnatiw, Michelle Salt, and Summer Mortimer. And I want to begin by talking about role models. Sport unites us, and role models serve to not only inspire, but to be someone to look up to. And I'm wondering, who were your role models growing up? Stef, why don't we start with you?
Well, I had role models that I saw on TV, but really it was Chantal Petitclerc when I met her. We were actually roommates together we were in the same apartment in 2008, and it was amazing to see who she was on TV, but I saw her behind the scenes. And without her even knowing it, she basically gave me a masterclass in what it means to be a world champion and how to do it. And she's actually the reason why I now drink coffee. She invited me one day and I thought, my goodness, she knows my name and she wants to hang out. And if she drinks lattes, I'm drinking lattes as well.
She's a good person, no, I can tell you about that. Senator Chantal Petitclerc. Brian.
I'd have to say my favorite athlete would be Kobe Bryant. I even have a Kobe Bryant portrait tattoo. I love how he speaks about dedication to sport, his resilience, his discipline most of all, and just his overall work ethic. It's really outstanding. So, R.I.P. Kobe.
Michelle.
For me, I was a big runner growing up. I loved track and field, long distance. So to watch Donovan Bailey become the fastest man in the world, and as a Canadian, it's just a moment that's really stuck with me. And I actually was on a panel a few years ago with him, got to meet him, and fangirled so hard, just couldn't say anything, completely quiet. So hopefully I have the opportunity to meet him again and not be so awkward.
Summer, what are you thinking?
I mean, coming from a swimming perspective, Michael Phelps has always been someone that I watched growing up as an able-bodied athlete, and then switching over into the Paralympic side of sport, and just from a training perspective, Chelsea Gotel and I trained at the same pool. She was the first Paralympic swimmer that I really got to know well, and I got to watch her develop her sport. So switching over, Chelsea Gotel was someone who was a big inspiration for me and a mentor, and we ended up training together for World Championships in 2010.
Fantastic. And Chelsea Gotel, as you know, is a big part of the IPC Athletes Council. I want to give you my favorite athlete growing up. Ronnie Ellis played for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a great hockey player. He also was a star in the 1972 Summit Series as Canada took on the Soviet Union in that great series, and Ronnie played an integral part in that. But I have to tell you this, I'm older than all of you. And I was alive and a young university student in 1980 when Terry Fox took on the Marathon of Hope. And he made an impact for people like me and of my generation. And Terry Fox is the first disabled athlete ever inducted into Canada Sports Hall of Fame. So there you go, a little bit of history for you. Listen, here's one thing that happened over the course of these Paralympic Games. Alison Lang is a sitting volleyball player for Canada. And she spoke to our Devin Haru following a match, and she had some interesting things to say about how the Olympic and Paralympic movements might or might not be coming together. Let's listen.
I've been asked countless times lately, why aren't the Olympics and Paralympics together? And for me, before they were to ever mesh together, there is a Paralympic movement now that needs to happen. The Paralympics, the word para doesn't mean paraplegic, it means parallel. So it runs parallel to the Olympics, which is crucial. So it's of equality, and us as Paralympians have gone through tremendous hurdles, whether it's accidents, illnesses, anybody can become disabled at any moment in time. And so I think if we are to accept and acknowledge athletes as they are and the way their bodies allow them to move, society will become more inclusive and accessible as a whole. So we're not just doing this for ourselves or for Canada. I'm going to get emotional, but we're doing it for young athletes, like when I was a child and I didn't have a role model and I didn't know I could become an elite athlete and represent my country. There's a greater meaning there for all kids to feel included and know that they can aspire to do great things.
Stef, what do you think about that? Alison seems to be suggesting that the Paralympic movement has to exist separately.
It's such a great conversation that she has started, and just listening to her say about having role models and having people with disabilities being visible as athletes. I actually grew up wanting to be an Olympian. My original dream was to be an international rugby superstar. That was my life's goal, and I was in an accident, and I knew nothing about parasport, and it just so happened. I used to work at Canadian Tire. I was a cashier. You couldn't write this stuff. My second week at work, Jeff Adams walked through my till. Jeff Adams, the wheelchair racer. To see someone and to chat with him, and we ended up, becoming friends later on. That is powerful. But I think if you were to combine the Olympics and Paralympics, you are looking at a city that would need to host 40,000 people. That is a huge hurdle, but that's a discussion for later. I think Alison is focusing more on the philosophy, and I do think that the two movements offer something quite different. I think there is something really powerful and really special about being a Paralympian. But as she was speaking, I realized I identify as an athlete first. When I started, I had no idea if I was going to make it to the Paralympics. And I do sport to connect with people. And I've always trained as part of a mixed group with able-bodied and athletes with disabilities. And I love the idea of making sure that we keep that connection, but also keeping what makes these two movements unique.
Michelle, picking up on that, something that Stef said, are Paralympians and para-athletes, are they seen increasingly as athletes without an asterisk?
I don't want to take away from the Paralympics and the significance, which is what Stef was speaking to. There is something so wonderful that comes out of the Paralympic Games. And, we are athletes. We train just as hard and maybe some ways differently than able-bodied and Olympic athletes. I look back at when I was 26, I lost my leg. I got back on my snowboard. I couldn't find a program or a coach that had worked with an adaptive athlete before. So I had to join a regular club, and it was great. It pushed me to work harder and to keep up with these athletes. But at the same time, my coach struggled on how to adapt my training. So I think that if we are going to see them run at the same time, it has to start at a grassroots level where we are integrated, adaptive athletes are integrated, and the coaches for these regular clubs and programs have the resources available to be able to adapt that training or to know how to work with an adaptive athlete.
Can I just pick up on that? Because I think that actually, it's the grassroots that's the key. That is what is going to change the attitudes. Because so often in my life, if I am at a gym, somebody will come up to me and say, hey, do you compete at the normal Olympics? And I'll look at them and say, no, I compete at the abnormal ones. And I just wait, because then they realize their language, they realize the attitude that lies underneath. And we have a joke about it, because it is funny, and because I get it. I didn't come necessarily because I had my accident, I had to change my attitudes as well. But I think the grass levels, as you said, I think that is key.
Yeah, and everyone's experience is different. I was 26, I knew about the Olympics. I didn't have much experience when it came to the Paralympics. I really hadn't known anybody living with a disability. And so my dream wasn't necessarily to be an Olympian. My dream was lit, and it was, inspired by being an amputee. And all the Paralympians that I would look up to, Amy Purdy, Nicole Roundy, these amazing amputees that were snowboarding and hitting jumps and doing all these things that I was doing before. So I think it's really dependent too on the experience and that visual that you have, whether it be the Olympics or the Paralympics.
Yep, you got to grow the grassroots though, and the Canadian Paralympic Committee is doing great things in that regard. I think about the Para-Tough Cup, which is getting people involved in para-sport, trying it out, so that people who have been on the sidelines can see that there is room to grow in the movement, and there is an option for them to become an athlete. Let's talk about the growth of the movement further and tie it in a little bit to the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games in Paris, included in the program, breaking to great success. New sports are coming onto the Olympic program. I think of 3x3 basketball, the urban sports, sport climbing. And LA is going to have some new sports, right? It's going to have flag football. It's going to have cricket. What about the Paralympic movement growing in this regard and reaching new audiences by including new and different sports. Brian, something happening there?
Yeah, so I think everyone's seen enough breakdancing for a bit. We don't want to see that in the Paralympics, but they have introduced para-triathlon, which Canada placed a medal in. Para-canoe, para-badminton, and para-taekwondo are all new sports. I, for one, would love to see some more water sports like para-surfing, and I personally know a Canadian athlete, Kendra Earhart, who's excellent at adaptive water skiing. So if that made it into the Paralympics, we for sure would get a medal.
I think it's also passion and different interests. You know, just because you're an athlete with a disability, it shouldn't limit you to the options you have in sport. Seeing new Paralympic sports is a fantastic way to say, hey, look at the new adaptive ways we can train and look at how we can compete. But it comes back to, one, having the representation so that people know it exists. Two, having the foundation and the grassroots and the support so that people can pursue those passions. And then three, having a community and a team that's really educated on how to train people with different abilities so that they can be the top elite athlete in whatever they want to pursue.
But Summer, the core sports have to remain strong, right? We've seen tremendous reaction from the fans to swimming at La Défense Arena, at Stade de France for the athletics. Those core sports have to remain strong, isn't that right?
Of course. I mean, they're rooted in the Paralympics movement's history. I mean, Paralympics, it's parallel to the Olympics. I think swimming and athletics, they're the two largest sports in the Paralympic Games. I don't think they're going to go anywhere anytime soon, nor should they. I think the ones that are the most popular will always stick around. And I think that having space and flexibility to bring new age sport and seeing this new generation and next wave of athletes and the sports that they really find interesting is where we're going to see some movement within the options at the Paralympic Games. Well, the big thing is the Paralympic movement has to grow, and we've seen it grow at Paris 2024. The crowds have been fantastic, great performances by the athletes, and I think we're going a long way to these athletes being athletes without an asterisk. I really do. Thanks so much to Stef Reid, Brian Hnatiw, Michelle Salt, Summer Mortimer. The 2024 Paralympic Games in Paris, France, as I say, they're in the books, but we're looking forward to Milano Cortina 2026, and we will be back for that on CBC Sports.